Hi friends, today we're gonna be doing some meal prep. I have never really made a video like this on my channel before, but it is something that has been highly requested. And I felt like now was the right time because, as you may know, I'm working on a cookbook. And you would think that that means I have all my meals covered, but honestly, at the end of the day, sometimes the last thing I wanna do is cook for myself and I end up ordering takeout. So I'm really excited. We're gonna do a winter meal prep. And I think I actually wanna turn this into a series. So we'll do one per season so that I could share some of my favorite seasonal recipes at the same time. As I'm sure you guys know, I cook for a living, basically, and I'm always at home and I have food around me at all times, which is why I'm not really one to meal prep. But I think meal prep is incredible. I used to do it in college. It not only saves you time, but usually also money, and it also saves a lot of food waste as well as food packaging and things that come along with ordering in or taking food out. All the recipes that we'll be making today will be completely vegan, but also gluten-free. And because I was thinking about it and I feel like it's a little bit more fun to switch it up, we're gonna have 2 variations of each meal. The goal is to prep this all under 2 hours. I think we can do it. And obviously it's a little bit more work making 2 variations of each meal. But if I was gonna meal prep for myself, I know I'd want a little bit of variety, and I feel like it's worth it to put in the time to make sure that the meals that you're eating for the week taste good. For breakfast for the week, we're making a chia oatmeal, and there's gonna be 2 flavors. So the first will be a simmered pear and the second will be caramelized banana. Lunch will be a basic grain bowl, but we're gonna alternate between one that is tofu based and another one that is tempeh based. So the tempeh one will have a garlic creamy sauce, and then the miso one is gonna have a peanut sauce. So it's a little bit more of like a Indonesian, Southeast Asian flavor. And then for dinner, we're making a sweet potato dish. So we're gonna have a sweet potato and leek soup, something a little bit lighter, because I feel like it's great to have options based on what your appetite is like that day. And the other sweet potato dinner is gonna be a red curry noodle dish with sweet potato chunks. So I've got my emotional support matcha, got my apron on because I think it's gonna be a bit of a messier day in the kitchen today. And I also like to have some bowls on hand for prep, but also for food waste. So any scraps, skins, and peels that you want to compost, collect them in a bowl just to keep your space a little bit tidier. All of the recipes will be linked in the description box below, so check that out and let's get cooking. So before we get into it, I want to talk to you a little bit about my process here. What I like to do is write out all the meals that I'm going to make, and then right underneath the process, kind of just a summary of what the steps are going to be, and then a separate ingredient list. After you write out the cooking steps, you could pick out the things that take the longest time and then start with those to save time, so that you could do other tasks while your rice is cooking, for example. Okay, so we have our rice already done, which is great. Next, I'm gonna start doing some prep work, so a lot of cutting. I wanna deal with my fruit first and just set it aside so that nothing gets too garlicky or oniony. Trim the tops and bottom. And then for pears, I like to use a melon baller to just scoop out the little seed part. And there you go. And then from here, I'm just gonna dice it up. I'm gonna prep a bunch of garlic, so we're gonna do that in bulk, and then we'll get to some of the other vegetables. So for the sweet potato, I'm gonna peel all of them, and the peels will go also into the little food waste bowl that we have for composting. It's not so much important how finely you chop everything, but more just so that everything is the same size so it cooks evenly, and going for uniform sizes here. Now for the leeks, we're just gonna do a super fine chop. I could have probably washed the cutting board really quickly before I did this, but it's all going in the same soup, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm just doing a super thin slice because we're gonna saute this down and it'll be the base of our soup. Instead of garlic and onion, it's gonna be garlic and leek. We're gonna start the soup. I have the pot heating up a little bit, and then we're gonna let this simmer while we start prepping other things, because it needs about 15 minutes. I'm gonna use a little bit of oil in the pot, and I really like this cultured oil. I've been using this a lot. It's been great. So we'll just put a little bit of that in there, and then I just like to give this time to properly cook down. You want it to get like almost jammy and just very flavorful and soft and tender. Add a little bit of salt while they cook down. And then I also like to add a little bit of chili. You could skip this if you prefer it less spicy. And a little bit of smoked paprika. Adding garlic. And then sweet potato. Now we're adding our broth. So we're gonna bring this to a boil and then simmer until all of the sweet potato is tender. So that's gonna take a minute, and we can move on to something else while that's cooking. I wanna dice up this zucchini, which we'll use for both the grain bowl for lunch, but also the red curry noodles. We also have broccoli, same deal with that. And we have carrots. We're gonna do a quick peel on the carrots. for the carrots, I'm gonna do a diagonal slice just so they look nice in the curry, and I'm gonna try to go pretty thin so that they cook more quickly because we wanna save time here. You could also use pre-chopped carrots if you really wanted to save time here. We're gonna dice the zucchini. I think I'm actually gonna do half moons. I can hear the soup in the background is boiling, so we're gonna bring it down to a low simmer, and that's gonna cook for another 10-15 minutes. I'm gonna split the broccoli up between the curry and one of the grain bowls, so we're gonna cut them into little pieces, and then we'll just split it up. I love when there's overlap in ingredients across the recipes because it helps you save on food waste, and also you can do prep for multiple recipes at once. So far we're pretty good on time. We're only like 30 minutes in, so. Okay, next I'm gonna cut up shallots, which I'm gonna use for the red curry recipe. I almost forgot to film, so I just cut them lengthwise, and now I'm finally dicing. I like my shallots to be cut pretty small because I really like them to be cooked through. I'm helping myself out here by cutting a little bit more finely to save cooking time. You could totally also use a food processor, but I don't want to have to wash that and dirty another appliance, so. All right, I'm also gonna do the ginger. I like to grate this because I find it easier, and ginger is kind of tough. Okay, we're sort of just like in the middle of everything right now, but I like to do things this way because I do find that it ultimately saves time. Let's just wrap up the sweet potato soup to get that out of the way because the sweet potatoes are fork tender and ready to blend. So I'm using my Vitamix for this. It's just super powerful, so it gets everything done very quickly, which I also love. I'm gonna use a ladle because this pot is a little too heavy for me to like dump it in there. And once you blend, this soup is done. I like this soup because it's so low maintenance. I've honestly made it so much ever since my soup week. I think this is probably like my 7th time making it because I also got really sick and it was all I wanted to eat. But I also love that you don't need to add any plant milk. It does get really nice and creamy and velvety just thanks to the sweet potato itself. So ingredients, like you saw, so simple. Whew, steamy. Here we go. This is the best time to adjust to taste because you could throw salt in the blender and blend again if you need to season. Honestly, I think it's perfect, so we're gonna let this cool off and just sit in the container while we do everything else. I like to pour things into containers when they're not piping hot because you need to wait for it to cool down anyway before you throw it in the fridge. So, soup is done. We're gonna set this aside. We're back at the stove. I'm just looking at my recipe now for the red curry. All these recipes are on my blog, so if you ever can't find them, just search the recipe name and Veggiekins in like Google and it'll come up. So I'm searching red curry noodles, Veggiekins in Google, and it's the first to pop up. This one is pretty easy. Instead of the tofu, I'm gonna substitute chickpeas because we're gonna be using tofu for lunch. So I just wanna switch it up and add some variety into the meals that we'll be eating. I also don't have coconut milk. I thought that I did, and we are apparently out. So instead we're gonna be using some oat milk in this curry. So once again, we're starting with oil. I'm gonna add shallot. Dropped my ginger. And I'm gonna grate in the garlic too. Add a little salt. For the curry paste, I am using a pre-made one. By all means, feel free to use fresh homemade chili paste, curry paste. But in the interest of saving time, I really like a pre-made red curry paste. And I'm gonna fry this a little bit. I'm gonna add in the broccoli, carrots, and sweet potato. We're basically gonna let this simmer and then cover it so that all the veggies get cooked down, and we'll set that aside. Things are getting nice and toasty, so I'm gonna throw in a little bit of zucchini. Doesn't need much cook time. And then chickpeas for protein. Last step for this recipe is just to cook some rice noodles, and this is very quick to cook. I like to separate the noodles first and plop them in. That way you get a pretty even divide of all the noodles. And I'm gonna add the curry right on top of the noodles. And then our dinners are all done. I wanna make sauces for the lunch. Now, my original plan was to do a creamy miso sauce and a peanut sauce, but we're gonna switch to garlic sauce because the tempeh I got is already seasoned, which isn't what I expected. So this last meal, the lunch, is super easy to make. We already have the rice ready and packed. And basically just sauteed veggies and then different sauce combos, and that's it, and we'll be done. For the peanut sauce, we're adding a little bit of tamari or soy sauce, some sesame oil, fresh lime juice, and we're grating in some ginger and garlic. Just a little bit of coconut sugar. We might need to add some more water because this peanut butter was super thick. Moving on to tofu, I'm just gonna cube it up. This is high protein tofu, so it's really dense compared to regular tofu and super high in protein as a result. And then even though we have a peanut sauce to pair this with, I'm just gonna give it a quick saute with just a little bit of coconut aminos because it's savory and sweet and just gives the tofu a nice little base flavor to start. The peanut sauce has a lot of flavor, but you still wanna give tofu a little something because it is very bland on its own. Since we're using the same veggies for both meals, we're gonna keep it very neutral. Add the garlic. Same pan, we're gonna add the tofu. And we'll just let it cook down a little bit and that'll be it for the tofu. We'll put a little bit of rice in each container. For the creamy garlic sauce, it's basically like a tahini lemon sauce. We're just gonna wing it and make it super simple. Some fresh grated garlic. Again, you could also use garlic powder. Some lemon juice, salt, pepper, and then we're gonna need to add some water. For the pears and the bananas, basically you just let the caramel or let the sugars caramelize, and that's kind of it. Just want to get it like nice and tender. So I'm adding the cut pears, and then you could use maple syrup. I'm going to use coconut sugar, just enough till it gets kind of caramelly, and a little bit of cinnamon. And it helps sometimes to add just a little bit of water, and then just cook it down until it's like soft and looks really stewy, and that's it. For the oats, I'm gonna put everything into one big bowl, doing oats and chia seeds because chia seeds will help it thicken up and adds nice protein. And then I'm just gonna eyeball the amount of plant milk. Also gonna add maple syrup and salt. So that's basically it. I'm just gonna let the chia seeds thicken up for a little bit, and then we'll put it all in the containers, and then we are done. So I now have meals for the next 5 days. I didn't include snacks or dessert, even though those things are very important to me, so feel free to add those on. If I was really in a rush, I might add like some protein bars or some pre-made snacks, and for desserts, I'd probably bake like a batch of cookies for the week. But that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. All the recipes will be linked down below, and just keep in mind you can make pretty much any recipe and meal prep it as long as you go about it in the right way and you just like prep out your steps. You can either do it the way that I did, which is like kind of everything at once, or focus on one recipe at a time. But overall, it took me actually less than 2 hours, maybe about like an hour and a half, except for, of course, the filming bits. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to see another one next season, and I hope it was helpful. I'll see you in another one too. Bye.